The Isle of Wight /ʻaɪl unregistered trademark Vectis / known to the ancient Romans as Vectis, is a county and the largest island of England, located in the English Channel, on average about 3 to 5 mi off the coast of Hampshire, separated from mainland United Kingdom by a strait called the Solent. The island has several resorts which have been holiday destinations since Victorian times. The history of the Isle of Wight includes a brief period of time as an independent kingdom in the 15th century. Until 1995, like Jersey and Guernsey, the island had a governor. Home to the poets Swinburne and Tennyson and to Queen Victoria, who built her much-loved summer residence and final home Osborne House at East Cowes, the island has a maritime and industrial tradition including boat building, sail-making, the manufacture of flying boats, the world's first hovercraft, and the testing and development of Britain's space rockets. The Isle hosts annual festivals including the Isle of Wight International Jazz Festival and the recently revived Isle of Wight Festival, which, in 1970, was the largest rock music event ever held. The island has well-conserved wildlife and some of the richest cliffs and quarries for dinosaur fossils in Europe. The Isle of Wight was part of Hampshire until 1890, when it became an independent administrative county. Until 1974 it continued to share the Lord Lieutenant of Hampshire when it was reconstituted as a non-metropolitan ceremonial county which gives its own Lord Lieutenant and recognised as a postal county. Its quickest access from the mainland is from Southsea by hovercraft, while 5 main ferry services shuttle across the Solent. History. Early history. The Isle of Wight is first mentioned in writing and geography by Ptolemy. During the late Iron Age, the Isle of Wight would appear to have been occupied by the Celtic tribe, the Durotriges, as attested by finds of their coins, for example, the South Wight hoard, and the Shalefleet hoard. The Roman historian Suetonius mentions that the entire island was captured by the commander Vespasian, who later became emperor. The remains of at least 5 Roman villas have been found on the island, including one near Gurnard which is submerged. At the end of the Roman Empire, the island of Vectis became a Jutish kingdom ruled by King Stephen and his successors until AD 661 when it was invaded by Wulfhere of Mercia and forcibly converted to Christianity. When he left for Mercia the islanders reverted to paganism. In AD 685 it was invaded by Crodwalla of Wessex and can be considered to have become part of Wessex. The resistance to the invasion was led by the local King ʻaɪl and after he was defeated and slain, at Crodwalla's insistence, Wight became the last part of England to convert to Christianity in AD 686. Following Alfred the Great's making of the West Saxon kings the kings of all England, it then became part of England. The island became part of the Shire of Hampshire and was divided into hundreds as was the norm. From this time the island suffered especially from Viking predations. Alfred the Great's navy defeated the Danes in 871 after they had ravaged Devon and the Isle of Wight. Middle Ages. The Norman conquest created the position of Lord of the Isle of Wight. Carisbrooke Priory and the fort of Carisbrooke Castle were founded. The island did not come under full control of the Crown until it was sold by the dying last Norman lord, Lady Isabella de Fortibus, to Edward I in 1293. In 1374, the Castilian fleet, led by Fernand Nchez de Tovar, the first Lord of Bells, sacked and burned the island. The lordship thereafter became a royal appointment, with a brief interruption when Henry de Beauchamp, 1st Duke of Warwick was in 1444 crowned King of the Isle of Wight, with King Henry VI assisting in person at the ceremony, placing the crown on his head. With no male heir, the regal title expired on the death of Henry de Beauchamp in 1446. The French landed an invasion force on the island on July 21, 1545 but were rapidly repulsed by local militia. English ships were engaged in battle with the French navy, and it was 2 days earlier, on July 19, that the Mary Rose was sunk. Henry VIII, who developed the Royal Navy and its permanent base at Portsmouth, fortified the island at Yarmouth, Cowes, East Cowes, and Sandown. Much later, after the Spanish Armada in 1588, the threat of Spanish attacks remained and the outer fortifications of Carisbrooke Castle were built between 1597 and 1602. Civil War. During the English Civil War, King Charles fled to the Isle of Wight, believing he would receive sympathy from the governor, Robert Hammond. Hammond was appalled, and imprisoned the king in Carisbrooke Castle. Charles had originally intended to flee to Jersey, but became lost in the New Forest and missed the boat. 7 Years' War. During the 7 Years' War, the island was used as a staging post for British troops departing on expeditions against the French coast, such as the raid on Rochefort. During 1759, with a planned French invasion imminent, a large force of soldiers was kept there so they could be moved at speed to any destination on the southern English coast. The French called off their invasion following the Battle of Quiberon Bay. A later French invasion plan involved a landing on the Isle of Wight. Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria made Osborne House on the Isle of Wight her summer home for many years and, as a result, it became a major holiday resort for fashionable Victorians including Alfred, Lord Tennyson, Julia Margaret Cameron, Charles Dickens, as well as the French painter Beard Morisot and members of European royalty. During her reign, in 1897, the world's first radio station was set up by Marconi, at the Needles Battery, at the western tip of the island. Modern history. During the Second World War, the island was frequently bombed. With its proximity to France, the island also had a number of observation stations and transmitters, and was the starting point for one of the earlier Operation Pluto pipelines to feed fuel to the Normandy landings. The Needles Battery was used as the site for testing and development of the Black Arrow and Black Knight space rockets, subsequently launched from Woomera, Australia. The Isle of Wight Festival was a very large rock festival that took place near Afton Down, West Wight in 1970, following two smaller concerts in 1968 and 1969. The 1970 show was notable both for being one of the last public performances by Jimi Hendrix and for the number of attendees reaching, by many estimates, 600,000. The festival was revived in 2002 in a different format and is now an annual event. Physical geography and wildlife. The Isle of Wight is roughly diamond-shaped and covers an area of 380 km2, nearly 150 sq miles. Slightly more than half of the island, mainly in the west, is designated as the Isle of Wight Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty. The island has 258 km2 of farmland, 52 km2 of developed areas, and 57 miles of coastline. The landscape of the island is diverse, leading to its oft-quoted description of England in miniature. West Wight is predominantly rural, with dramatic coastlines dominated by the chalk downland ridge, running across the whole island and ending in the Needles Stacks, perhaps the most photographed place on the Isle of Wight. The Southwestern Quarter is commonly referred to as the Back of the Wight because it has a unique social and historical background. The highest point on the island is St Boniface Down, at 241 metres, which is a Marilyn. The rest of the island's landscape also has great diversity, with perhaps the most notable habitats being the soft cliffs and sea ledges, which are scenic features and also very important for wildlife, and are internationally protected. The River Medina flows north into the Solent, whilst the other main river, the Eastern Yar, flows roughly northeast, emerging at Bembridge Harbour at the eastern end of the island. There is another river in the west of the island called the Western Yar, flowing the short distance from Freshwater Bay to a relatively large estuary at Yarmouth. The south coast of the island borders the English Channel. Without man's intervention, the sea might well have split the island into three. At the west end, where a bank of pebbles separates Freshwater Bay from the marshy backwaters of the Western Yar east of Freshwater, and at the east end where a thin strip of land separates Sandown Bay from the marshy basin of the Eastern Yar, east of Sandown. Yarmouth itself was effectively an island, only connected to the rest of the island by a regularly breached neck of land immediately east of the town. The Isle of Wight is one of the few places in England where the red squirrel is flourishing, with a stable population, and unlike most of England, no grey squirrels are to be found on the island. There are occasional sightings of wild deer. Rare and protected species such as the dormouse and many rare bats can be found. The Glanville fritillary butterfly's distribution in the United Kingdom is largely restricted to the edges of the crumbling cliffs of the Isle of Wight. A competition in 2002 named the pyramidal orchid as the Isle of Wight's county flower. the island has one of the most important areas in Europe for dinosaur fossils. The eroding cliffs often reveal previously hidden remains, particularly along the region known as the Back of the Wight. Climate: being one of the most southerly parts of the UK, the Isle of Wight has a milder subclimate than most other areas, which makes it a popular holiday destination, particularly the resorts in the southeast of the island. It also has a longer growing season than most other areas in the UK. The mean temperature is 13 degrees Celsius averaged over the whole year, and is 18 degrees in July and August. The microclimate of places such as Lower Ventnor is influenced by their sheltered position under the cliffs. The Isle of Wight is also sunnier than most parts of the UK and Western Europe, with 1800 to 2100 hours of sunshine a year, more than areas of northern Spain. Geology: the Isle of Wight is made up of a wide variety of different rock types ranging from early Cretaceous times to the middle of the Paleogene. The northern half of the island is mainly made up of tertiary clays, with the southern half formed of Cretaceous rocks. All the rocks found on the island are sedimentary made up of mineral grains from previously existing rocks. These are consolidated to form the rocks that can be seen on the island today, such as limestone, mudstone and sandstone. Rocks on the island are very rich in fossils, and many of these can be seen exposed on the beaches as the cliffs erode. Lignitic coal is present in small quantities in seams on the cliffs and shore at Atecliff Bay, and fossilized mollusks have been found there. Dinosaur bones and footprints can be seen in and on the rocks exposed around the island's beaches, especially at Yeoviland and Compton Bay. As a result, the isle has been nicknamed Dinosaur Island. Along the northern coast of the island there is a rich source of fossilized shellfish, crocodiles, turtles and mammal bones. The youngest of these date back to around 30 million years ago. The geological structure is dominated by a large monocline, which causes the marked change in age of strata from the northern younger tertiary beds to the older Cretaceous beds of the south. This gives rise to a dip of almost 90 degrees in the chalk beds, seen best at the Needles. About 10,000 years ago, the great ice sheets of the last ice age melted and the sea level rose. Probably about 7,000 years ago, the Isle of Wight became separated from the mainland. Politics. With a single Member of Parliament and 132,731 permanent residents in 2001, it is the most populous parliamentary constituency in the United Kingdom. Parliament have passed Section 11, Clause 6, 1, of the Parliamentary Voting System and Constituencies Act 2011 to alter this. The Isle of Wight is a ceremonial and non-metropolitan county. Since the abolition of its two borough councils in 1995 and the restructuring of the county council as the Isle of Wight Council, it has been a unitary county. As a constituency of the House of Commons, it is traditionally a battleground between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. The current Member of Parliament Andrew Turner is a Conservative, and his predecessor Dr. Peter Brandt was a Liberal Democrat. The Isle of Wight Council election of 2013 saw the Conservative Party lose the majority which they had held since 2005 to the island independence. Independent councillors currently hold 20 of the 40 seats in the council. There have been small regionalist movements, the Vectis National Party and the Isle of Wight Party. But they have attracted little support in elections. Main towns. Newport, in the centre of the island, is the county town of the Isle of Wight and the island's main shopping area. Recent developments include a new bus station with retail complex and a new retail park on the outskirts. Located next to the River Modena, Newport Quay was a busy port until the mid-19th century, but has now been mainly converted into art galleries, flats and other meeting places. Ryde, the island's largest town with a population of around 30,000, is in the northeast of the island. It is a Victorian town with an 875 yards long pier and 3¾ miles of beaches, attracting many tourists. Every year there is a Ryde Carnival in two parts, spread over more than one day, one in the daytime, and one at night with many coloured lights. Ryde is also home to the ice hockey club White Link Raiders, who play in the third-tier English National Ice Hockey League. Cowes is the location of the annual Cowes Week and an international sailing centre. It is also the home of the record-setting sailor Dame Ellen MacArthur. East Cowes is famous for Osborne House, Norris Castle, and is the home from 1929 to 1964 of Saunders Row, the historic aircraft, flying boat, rocket and hovercraft company. Sandown is another popular seaside resort. It is home to the Isle of Wight Zoo, the Dinosaur Isle Geological Museum, and one of the island's two 18-hole golf courses. Shanklin, just south of Sandown, also attracts tourists, with its high summer sunshine levels, sandy beaches, Shanklin Chine and the Old Village. Ventnor, built on the steep slopes of St Boniface down on the south coast of the island, leads down to a picturesque bay that attracts many tourists. Recent developments include Ventnor Haven, a small harbour built around a Victorian-style bandstand. In addition, there are smaller towns along the coasts, particularly on the eastern side of the island. There are also a number of smaller villages. Some of these also attract many tourists. Culture. Language and dialect. The accent of the Isle of Wight is similar to the traditional dialect of Hampshire, featuring the dropping of some consonants and an emphasis on longer vowels. It is similar to the West Country dialects heard in SW England, but less removed in sound from the estuary English of the SE. As with many other traditional Southern English regional dialects and accents, a strong island accent is not now commonly heard, and, as speakers tend to be older, this decline is likely to continue. The island also has its own local and regional words. Some words, including grockle and nipper nips, are still commonly used and are shared with neighbouring areas of the mainland. A few are unique to the island, for example overner and corkhead. Other words are more obscure and now used mainly for comic emphasis, such as malashug and namit. Some other words are girt meaning great, as in size rather than quality. Look at N, we is girt at flappin' abate. Look at him, with his big hat flapping around, and gallybagger. Identity. There has been and still is some confusion between the identities of the Isle of Wight as a separate county and, as it once was, a part of the nearby county of Hampshire. At least one mainstream newspaper article as recently as 2008 refers to the Isle of Wight in Hampshire. Prior to 1890, the Isle of Wight was normally regarded and was administered as a part of Hampshire. With the formation of the Isle of Wight County Council in 1890, the distinct identity became officially established. See also Politics of the Isle of Wight. In January 2009, the new flag of the Isle of Wight, the first general flag for the county, was accepted by the Flag Institute. Denizens of the Isle of Wight are sometimes referred to as Vectensons, Vectians or Corkheads. Sport, cycling. The Isle of Wight is well known for its cycling, with it reaching the top 10 in Lonely Planet Best in Travel Guide for cycling locations. The island is also host to events such as the Isle of Wight Randonneur Copyright and the Isle of Wight Cycling Festival, which are hosted annually. There are cycling clubs such as Vectis Road Cycling Club, which hosts mainly time trials on the island, also including an annual 3-day time trial festival on a bank holiday weekend in May. Rowing. There are rowing clubs at Newport, Ryde and Shanklin. In June 1998, a group of ladies from the Isle of Wight made history by becoming the first team of ladies to row around the island in a fixed-seat Solent galley. They completed their trip in 10 hours and 20 minutes. Their team photo is on show in Ryde Rowing Club. Rowers from Ryde Rowing Club have rowed around the island on a number of other occasions, the first being 1880. The Fours record was set August 16, 1995 at 7 hours and 57 minutes by a Ryde crew. Two rowers from Southampton Arcade set the two-man record in July 2003 at 8 hours and 34 minutes, and in 2006 Gus McKechnie of ʻaɪl Porters Rowing Club completed a clockwise row as part of a Fours crew, making him the only person to have rowed around both ways. The route around the island is some 60-plus miles, usually anti-clockwise, and involves, even in good conditions, a number of notable obstacles including the Needles Rocks and the overfalls at St Catherine's Point. Start and finish points were traditionally Ryde Rowing Club, however other start points have been chosen in recent years that give tidal advantages. Sailing. Cowes is a centre for sailing, playing host to several racing regattas. Cowes Week is the longest-running regular regatta in the world, with over 1,000 yachts and 8,500 competitors taking part in over 50 classes of yacht racing. In 1851 the first America's Cup race took place around the island. Other major sailing events hosted in Cowes include the Fastnet Race, the Round the Island Race, the Admiral's Cup, and the Commodore's Cup. Trampolining. There are two main trampoline clubs on the island, in Freshwater and Newport, competing at regional, national and international grades. Marathon. The Isle of Wight Marathon is the United Kingdom's oldest continuously held marathon, having been run every year since 1957. The course starts in Ryde, passing through Newport, Shanklin and Sandown, before finishing back in Ryde. It is an undulating course with a total climb of 1,506 feet. Speedway. The island is home to the Isle of Wight Islanders Speedway team, who compete in the sport's third division, the National League. The club was founded in 1996, with a first-night attendance of 1,740. Ice hockey. The island is also home to the White Link Raiders, an ice hockey team based at Ryde Arena. They compete in the first tier of the English National Ice Hockey League, the third division in the country. There is also an amateur team, the Vectis Tigers of the second-tier English National Ice Hockey League, and 4 youth teams including the Isle of Wight Wildcats, all based at Ryde Arena. Hockey. Following an amalgamation of the hockey clubs on the Isle of Wight in 2011, the Isle of Wight Hockey Club now runs 2 men's senior teams and 2 ladies' senior teams. These teams compete at a range of levels in the Hampshire Open Leagues and welcome players of all abilities to join their training sessions on Wednesday evenings. There is also a comprehensive junior setup who train on Mondays and compete in competitions in the U12 and U14 age group. Football. The now disbanded Ryde Sports FC founded in 1888 and became one of the 8 founder members of the Hampshire League in 1896. There are several other non-league clubs such as Newport FC. There is an Isle of Wight Saturday Football League with 3 divisions, and a rugby union club, plus various other sporting teams. Beach football is particularly prevalent on the island and has several of the nation's premier clubs, with almost all of the England beach soccer team made up from players from the island. Many of the stadiums are used when the island hosts the Island Games, as it has done twice. Cricket. The Isle of Wight is the 39th official county in English cricket, and the Isle of Wight Cricket Board organise an internal cricket league between various local clubs. Ventnor Cricket Club compete in the Southern Premier League, and have won the second division several times in recent years. There is a new county ground near Newport, which held its first match on September 6, 2008. As of November 2010, the Isle of Wight Cricket Board have been in discussion with the Minor Counties Cricket Association and the England and Wales Cricket Board regarding proposals to enter a side in the minor counties tournaments. The island has recently produced some notable cricketers, such as Danny Briggs, who plays county cricket for Hampshire County Cricket Club and is a member of the England Lions. Hampshire have played a number of first-class matches on the island, at J. Samuel White's Ground and the Victoria Recreation Ground. Island Games. The Isle of Wight competes in the Biennial Island Games, which it hosted in 1993 and again in 2011, with events taking place across the island. Motor scooter. The annual Isle of Wight International Scooter Rally convenes on August bank holiday, having begun in 1980. This gathering is one of the biggest scooter rallies in the world, now attracting between 4,000 to 7,000 participants. Music. The Isle of Wight is home to the Isle of Wight Festival and Bestival. In 1970, with Jimi Hendrix headlining, the festival attracted an audience of 700,000, despite the island itself having a population of roughly 100,000. The Isle of Wight is also the home of the band The Bees. Recently they have been having more national success and often perform at smaller concerts on the island. The band Trixie's Big Red Motorbike as well as Mark King of Level 42 also came from the Isle of Wight. Singer-songwriter Gareth Ick also spent a lot of his adult life on the Isle of Wight. The indie alternative rock band Last Chance City are also residents, as well as indie pop band Goodbye Stereo, math rock band Signals, modern rock band The Operators and former indie rock ensemble Bastilla. The Isle of Wight has also hosted a one-day festival called Summer Madness. It started in 2009 when Madness headlined it. In 2010 Paul Weller headlined. In January 2011 it was reported that the promoter of Summer Madness was insolvent. Economy. This is a table of the trend in regional gross value added by the Isle of Wight economy at current basic prices by the Office for National Statistics with figures in millions of pounds. Industry and agriculture. The largest industry on the Isle of Wight is tourism, but the island has a strong agricultural heritage, including sheep and dairy farming and the growing of arable crops. Traditional agricultural commodities are more difficult to market off the island because of the transport costs, but island farmers have managed successfully to exploit some specialist markets. The high price of these products overcomes the transport costs. One of the most successful agricultural sectors at present is the growing of crops under cover, particularly salad crops, including tomatoes and cucumbers. The Isle of Wight has a longer growing season than much of the United Kingdom and this also favours such crops. Garlic has been successfully grown in Newport for many years, and is even exported to France. This has led to the establishment of an annual garlic festival at Newport, which is one of the largest events of the island's annual calendar. The favourable climate has led to the success of vineyards, including one of the oldest in the British Isles, at Adgestone near Sandown. Lavender is also grown for its oil. The largest sector of agriculture has been dairying, but due to low milk prices, and strict UK legislation for UK milk producers, the dairy industry has declined. There were nearly 150 dairy producers of various sizes in the mid-80s, but this has now dwindled down to just 24. Due to modern farming practices, the island has noted increased levels of pesticide poisoning in local farmers and other local residents living near crops and vineyards. The making of sailcloth, boats and other connected maritime industry has long been associated with the island, although this has somewhat diminished in recent years. Cowes is still home to various small marine-related companies such as boat builders. Although they have reduced the extent of the plants and workforce, including the sale of the main site, GKN operates what was once the British Hovercraft Corporation, a subsidiary of, and known latterly, when manufacturing focus changed, as Westland Aircraft. Prior to its purchase by Westland, it was the independent company known as Saunders Roe. It remains one of the most notable historic firms, having produced many of the flying boats, and the world's first hovercraft. The island's major manufacturing activity today is in composite materials, used by boat builders and the wind turbine manufacturer Vectis, which has a wind turbine blade factory and testing facilities in Newport and East Cowes. Bimbridge Airfield is the home of Britten-Norman, manufacturers of the Islander and Trilander aircraft. This is shortly to become the site of the European assembly line for Cirrus light aircraft. The Norman Aeroplane Company is a smaller aircraft manufacturing company operating in Sandown. There have been 3 other aircraft manufacturers that built planes on the island. In 2005, Northern Petroleum began exploratory drilling for oil, with its Sandhills 2 borehole at Porchfield, but ceased operations in October that year, after failing to find significant reserves. Breweries. There are 3 breweries on the island. Goddard's Brewery in Ryde opened in 1993. David Yates, who was head brewer of the Island Brewery, started brewing as Yates Brewery at the Inn at St. Lawrence in 2000. The Island Brewery, located in Shalefleet, was formed in 1993 by Mick Kennell and Dave Coleman. Ventnor Brewery, which closed in 2009, was the last incarnation of Bert's Brewery, which had been brewing on the island since the 1840s in Ventnor. Until the 1960s most pubs were owned by Muse Brewery, sited in Newport near the old railway station, but it closed and the pubs taken over by Strong's and then by Whitbread. By some accounts Muse beer was apt to be rather cloudy and dark. They pioneered the use of cans in the 19th century for export to British India. The old brewery was derelict for many years but was then severely damaged in a spectacular fire. Services, tourism and heritage. The heritage of the island is a major asset, which has for many years kept its economy going. Holidays focused on natural heritage, including both wildlife and geology, are becoming a growing alternative to the traditional British seaside holiday, which went into decline in the second half of the 20th century, due to the increased affordability of air travel to alternative destinations. Tourism is still the largest industry on the island. In 1999, the 130,000 island residents were host to 2.7 million visitors. Of these, 1.5 million stayed overnight, and 1.2 million visits were day visits. Only 150,000 of these visitors were international visitors. Between 1993 and 2000, visits increased at a rate of 3% per year, on average. At the turn of the 19th century, the island had 10 pleasure piers, including 2 at Ryde and a chain pier at Seaview. The Victoria Pier and Cowes succeeded the earlier Royal Pier but was itself removed in 1960. The piers at Ryde, Seaview, Sandown, Shanklin and Ventnor originally served a coastal steamer service that operated from Southsea on the mainland. The piers at Seaview, Shanklin, Ventnor and Alum Bay were all destroyed by storms during the last century. Today only the railway pier at Ryde and the piers at Sandown, Totland Bay and Yarmouth survive. Black Gang Chine is arguably the oldest theme park in the UK, and one of the oldest in the world. As well as more traditional tourist attractions, the island is often host to walking holidays or cycling holidays through the attractive scenery. Almost every town and village on the island plays host to hotels, hostels and camping sites. Out of the peak summer season, the island is still an important destination for coach tours from other parts of the United Kingdom, and an annual walking festival has attracted considerable interest. The 67 miles Isle of Wight coastal path follows the coastline as far as possible, deviating onto roads where the route is impassable closer to the sea. A major contribution to the local economy comes from sailing and marine-related tourism. Summer camp at Camp Beaumont is an attraction at the Old Bridge school site. Transport. The Isle of Wight has a total of 489 miles of roadway. Major roads run between the main island towns, with smaller roads connecting villages. It is one of the few counties in the UK not to have a motorway, although there is a dual carriageway from Coppins Bridge in Newport towards the north of Newport near the island's hospital and prison. A comprehensive bus network operated by Southern Vectis links most island settlements, with Newport as the central hub. The island's location 5 miles off the mainland means that longer distance transport is by boat. Car ferry and passenger services are run by Whitelink and Red Funnel, as well as a hovercraft operated by Hover Travel. The island formerly had its own railway network of over 55 miles, but only one line remains in regular use. The Island Line is part of the United Kingdom's national rail network, running a little under 9 miles from Ryde to Shanklin. The line was opened by the Isle of Wight Railway in 1864, and from 1996 to 2007 was run by the smallest train operating company on the network, Island Line Trains. It is notable for utilising ex-London Underground rolling stock. Branching off the Island Line at Smallbrook Junction is the heritage Isle of Wight Steam Railway, which runs for 5½ miles to the outskirts of Wootton. There are currently 2 airfields for general aviation, Isle of Wight Airport at Sandown and Bembridge Airport. The island has over 200 miles of cycleways, much of which can be enjoyed by families off-road. Major trail are the Sunshine Trail, which incorporates Sandown, Shanklin, Godchill, and Wroxall in a 12-mile circular route, the Troll Trail between Cowes and Sandown, the Round the Island cycle route, which circumnavigates the island on a reported 62-mile ride. A full list of routes are available here. I'll Cycle. The site is constantly updated to add new routes. Communications. All the island telephone exchanges are broadband enabled, although some areas, such as Wrekin, have no broadband access. Some urban areas such as Cowes and Newport are also covered by cable lines. Media. The Isle of Wight's main local newspaper is the Isle of Wight County Press, which costs 80p. It discusses local issues and is published each Friday, or the previous working day if the Friday is a public holiday. Local, commercial, Vectis Radio covers the Isle of Wight and across the world is the island's online radio station, now broadcasting from the Riverside Centre, Newport, broadcasting since 2010. The island has one local commercial radio station and also falls within the coverage area of a number of local stations on the near mainland. Isle of Wight Radio has broadcast in the medium wave band since 1990 and on 107.0 MHz FM since 1998, as well as streaming on the Internet. The island's not-for-profit community radio station opened in 2007. Angel Radio began broadcasting on 91.5 MHz from studios in Cowes from a transmitter near Newport. On February 1, 2009, Wight FM began broadcasting as an internet radio station. It closed down 6 months later. This was replaced in February 2010 by internet station Vectis Radio. Online news sources for the Isle of Wight include On the Wight and the Isle of Wight Chronicle. The Chronicle was originally a best-selling island paper in the 1950s. The island has had community television stations in the past, first TV12 and then Solent TV from 2002 until its closure on May 24, 2007. ʻaɪl TV is a local internet video news channel. The Isle of Wight is part of the BBC South Region and the ITV Meridian Region. Important broadcasting facilities on Isle of Wight are Chillerton Down Transmitting Station, whose mast is the tallest structure on Isle of Wight, and Row Ridge Transmitting Station. Prisons, the geography of the island, and its location near the densely populated south of England, led to it hosting 3 prisons, Albany, Camp Hill and Parkhurst, all located outside Newport near the main road to Cowes. Albany and Parkhurst were among the few Category A prisons in the UK until they were downgraded in the 1990s. The downgrading of Parkhurst was precipitated by a major escape. 3 prisoners made their way out of the prison on January 3, 1995 for 4 days of freedom before being recaptured. Parkhurst especially enjoyed notoriety as one of the toughest jails in the United Kingdom and housed many notable inmates, including the Yorkshire Ripper Peter Sutcliffe, New Zealand drug lord Terry Clark and the Cray twins. Camp Hill is located to the west of, and adjacent to, Albany and Parkhurst, on the very edge of Parkhurst Forest, having been converted first to a borstal and later to a Category C prison. It was built on the site of an army camp. There is a small estate of tree-lined roads with well-proportioned officers' quarters to the south and east. Camp Hill closed as a prison in March 2013. The management of all 3 prisons was merged into a single administration, under the name of HMP Isle of Wight in April 2009, with Camp Hill closing in 2013. Education. There are 69 local education authority-maintained schools on the Isle of Wight, and 2 independent schools. As a rural community, many of these schools are small, with average numbers of pupils lower than in many urban areas. There are currently primary schools, middle schools and high schools. However, education reforms have led to plans for closures. There is also the Isle of Wight College, which is located on the outskirts of Newport. From September 2010, there is a transition period from the 3-tier system of primary, middle and high schools. Some schools have now closed their doors, such as Shale CE Primary School. Other schools have become federated, such as Braddings CE Primary School and St Helens Primary School. Christ the King College started as a middle school, but is being converted into a high school so that eventually it will have a 6th form. From September 2011, there will be 5 new schools, with an age range of 11 to 18 years, which will replace the existing high schools. When the transition is complete, there will be fewer schools on the Isle of Wight. Notable residents. Notable residents have included places of interest. Overseas names. The Isle of Wight has given its names to many parts of former colonies, most notably Isle of Wight County in Virginia, founded by settlers from the island in the 17th century. Its county seat is a town named Isle of Wight. Other notable examples include Isle of Wight, an island off Maryland, USA, Donno's Head, West Falkland, Ventnor, Cowes on Phillip Island, Victoria, Australia, Carisbrooke, Seaview, Victoria, Australia, Ryde, New South Wales, Australia, Shanklin, Sandown, New Hampshire, USA, Ventnor City, New Jersey, USA, Gardiner's Island, New York, USA shown as Isle of Wight on some of the older maps. Notable media references: the Northumbrian scholar, Bede, recorded the arrival of Christianity on the Isle of Wight in the year 686, when the population was massacred and replaced by Christians. The Beatles' song, When I'm 64, written by Paul McCartney, refers to renting a cottage on the Isle of Wight. The Isle of Wight is called the Island in some editions of Thomas Hardy's novels in his fictional Wessex. There is a running joke in radio sitcom The Navy Lark involving Sub-Lieutenant Philip's inability to navigate and subsequently tail the Isle of Wight ferry. The Isle of Wight is the setting of Julian Barnes's novel England, England. The island also features in John Wyndham's novel The Day of the Triffids and Simon Clarke's sequel to it, The Night of the Triffids. Bob Dylan recorded the songs Like a Rolling Stone, Quinn the Eskimo, Minstrel Boy, and She Belongs to Me for the album Self-Portrait Live on the Isle of Wight. The 1980 dramatization of Dennis Potter's work Blade on the Feather was filmed on the island. The Isle of Wight is the setting in D. H. Lawrence's book The Trespasser, filmed for TV in 1981 on location. In the 1966 novel Colossus, the entire island is selected for the development of a new base by the supercomputer, Colossus. The Isle of Wight is the setting of Graham Masterton's book Prey. Parts of Fragiles, a 2005 film starring Callista Flockhart, were filmed on the island. Mrs. Brown, 1997, with Dame Judi Dench and Billy Connolly was filmed at Osborne and Shale. The 1973 British film That'll Be the Day starring David Essex and Ringo Starr, which was written by Ray Connolly and directed by Claude Hatham, and set in the late 50s early 60s and was partially filmed on the Isle of Wight including scenes shot in Ryde and Shanklin. Something to Hide, 1972, starring Peter Finch was filmed near Cowes. There is also a scene on the Red Funnel Ferry. Karl Marx visited the Isle of Wight on numerous occasions while he was writing the Communist Manifesto. The Commodore 64 game Spirit of the Stones by John Worsley was set on the Isle of Wight. The song Island in the Rain, by the Men They Couldn't Hang is about the Isle of Wight. In S.M. Stirling's novel The Protector's War, in which all high-energy technology ceased to function, the Isle of Wight became the refuge of the British monarchy and government. After the Holocaust that followed, the island was the base for repopulation of England and the European mainland whose populations had perished except for cannibals and savages. Setting of Jane Feather's novel, The Least Likely Bride. The island is featured as the location of Vectis Abbey in Glenn Cooper's novels Library of the Dead and Book of Souls. A manga in the Strike Witches series, Strike Witches, One-Winged Witches, focuses on the Isle of Wight detachment group and is set on the island. The simulator video games Ship Simulator 2008 and Ship Simulator Extremes feature the Isle of Wight as a playable region, and the passenger ferries MV Red Eagle and Red Jet 4 on the Hover Travel hovercraft as playable ships. See also: List of civil parishes on the Isle of Wight, List of places on the Isle of Wight, List of High Sheriffs of the Isle of Wight, List of Lord Lieutenants of the Isle of Wight, Isle of Wight Gasification Facility, Isle of Wight Rifles, Wight, one of the sea areas of the British shipping forecast, named after the island. Yaverland Battery, Notes. References. Hansard, Wednesday 14 November 2001 column 850, external links, Isle of Wight at DMOZ, Isle of Wight Festival, official Isle of Wight Tourist Guide, Isle of Wight Independent Visitor Guide, Media, the Isle of Wight County Press 32,000 copies sold each week, Isle of Wight Radio 40,000 listeners each week, online media, Vectis Radio Community Online Radio for the Isle of Wight and beyond, on the Wight, Isle of Wight Mail, photos, Isle of Wight Pictures, Isle of Wight Historic Postcards, Isle of Wight Photos, old pictures of the Isle of Wight, images of the Isle of Wight at the English Heritage Archive.